Hey everybody, welcome. Today is a chapter 10 extension lesson. Okay, we're going to be going a little bit further into sine and cosine today. And what you need to know is that there are different laws to find sine and cosine. And we are going to figure that out today. All right, so we're going to use the law of sine and the law of cosines to solve. Okay. So before, we've talked about using those ratios, sine, cosine, and tangent with all right triangles. All of them have a right angle in it. Now what we are going to do is we are going to be calculating these ratios for any triangle. So not just a right triangle. It could be an acute triangle. It could be an obtuse triangle. Just basically any triangle. Okay. So we're going to be using a different process and different formulas to get there. All right, I hope you're excited. Let's go. So the very first three are just a little bit of a review problems. I want you to write this down. You're going to use your calculator to find the trigonometric ratio and find it to the nearest hundredth. The nearest hundredth. All right, so pause now and use your calculator to figure those out. Ready? Get going. All right, so this very first one, do not be afraid if it turns out negative. Okay, so the tangent of 103 to the nearest hundredth is a negative 4.33. All I did on my calculator was type in tan, my tangent button, type in 103, and I get negative 4.33. Next, cosine, type in cosine, right, 165. Your answer is a negative 0.97. Last but not least, we have the sine of 93, and when you take the sine of 93, notice you'll get a number 0.998629535. Okay, we want it to round to the nearest hundredth, so I get a positive, not negative. I'll just do positive 1.00. Okay, because you're rounding that hundredth nine to a zero, rounding up there, rounding up on the 10th, which means we have to round the ones up. Fantastic. All right, moving on. This is a blank slide. This blank slide does not need to be written down. It is a break in the action. All right? All right. So today, here's the theorem of 851, or just the theorem of the law of sine. So I want you to write down that law of sines. You do not need to write down what's below it, just what's inside that yellow area. So have fun. Write it down. All right, so if you look at this, for any triangle, and it says for any triangle ABC, with the side lengths A, B, and C, notice you have the sine over A, sine of B over B, sine of C over C. Now, when you look at this, notice, if I have the sine of A, it's always going to be over the opposite side. Side A is opposite to my angle A. Same thing with B. Side B is opposite angle B, and side C is opposite angle C. So all you do is you take the angle that you know and you put it over its opposite side, set it equal to another one over its opposite side. You're going to be using proportions, so get used to that. All right, it says you can use the law of sine to solve a triangle if you are given two things like ASA or AAS, okay, or, and this is not a theorem, but two sides and an non-included angle, so something like side-side angle. So if you're giving two angles with the included side, two angles with a non-included side, and two sides with a non-included angle, okay, you can use this theorem. All right? All right, here we go. Let's try a few. All right, so this you don't have to write down, no yellow bar, but I want to explain this. So we want to figure out what FG is. We want to figure out this side. Okay, and according to the law of sine, okay, we put a, basically set up a proportion. We put angle over the opposite side, and on the other side, angle over the opposite side. So given the information that I know, I can put the sine of F, which is the sine of 39, because that is f, notice that's f, over 40, because that's the opposite side, is equal to the sine of 32 over FG. Now, the reason why I chose the sine of 32 over FG is because we want to figure out what FG is. In order for us to put that in as a proportion, we need to write down the opposite angle. The opposite angle goes on top. Okay, so use the given information that the drawing gives you, and you're going to start solving. Now, we're going to do all the algebraic movement here. Okay, we're not going to calculate anything as of right now, because we want to get an exact answer. So when I do this, I'm going to cross multiply like I would on a proportion, and I get FG, or you could just use x works too, times the sine of 39 is equal to 40 times the sine of 32. In order for me to get FG all by itself, I would need to divide by the sine of 39. So FG, line segment FG, is equal to 40 times sine of 32 over sine of 39. So on my calculator, we need to be careful, okay, because you're going to type in 40 times the sine of 32, and when you write sine, it's going to give you those parentheses. Okay, so 40 times sine of 32. Make sure you put in that, before you press that division sign, put that ending of parentheses after that 2. So 40 times sine 32, end of parentheses, divided by the sine of 39, and you will get the answer of 33.7. Okay? Now, this is a side length. We're trying to find FG is a side length, so I could just write units as my label, but I do not put degrees. Okay? Don't put degrees. Do you put degrees? No! No, you don't put degrees. Okay, so the very first thing I did set up a proportion. Next, cross multiplication. Third, do the algebra and solve. Yeah! All right, here we go. Buckle up, because it's your turn. Boom! Find NP. Bam! Oh, yeah. Woo! Geometry. All right, here we go. If you did not write this down, pause now so you can write it down. I'm going to read it. It says, find the measure. Round lengths to the nearest tenth, and angle measures to the nearest degree. Okay, so now what we have to do is we have to figure out what NP is. NP is this measurement right here. Again, we need to use the information given. So as my formula, remember the sine over the opposite side is equal to the sine of the angle over the opposite side. So I'm going to take the sine of n, which is 39, over 22. And the reason why I do that is because it gives me 22. All right. Then I'm going to use the sine of 88 and set that over my NP. And I could use x, but that's what I want to do. This is what I want to figure out is NP, and I need to use that opposite angle to figure that out. Okay, so now I'm going to cross multiply, and I get NP times the sine of 39 is equal to 22 times the sine of 88. Do I calculate, or do I put that in my calculator? No, I want to get a more exact answer. So how I do that is I divide by sine of 39. So in my calculator, I will type in NP. Well, I can't type in NP. I'm going to type in 22 times the sine. Make sure that we end those parentheses of 88 over the sine of 39. Okay, when I do that, when I take that entire formula and I divide by the sine of 39, I get 34.9. That's a length, so I just have units. There's no degree symbol. Okay, and it's rounded to the nearest tenth. All right, sweet. And that, yes, that is a 4, not a 9. Okay, so if I rewrote this, 34.9, 34.9. If you're thinking, oh, well, that was a 9, you're thinking wrong. All right, here we go. Moving on. Now, this is an angle measure. We want to figure out what the measure of angle L is. So think about that. How would I find the measurement of angle L? I still use that same formula, but I do something different in the end. All right? So if you think you know what it is, if you think you got an idea, I want you to give this one a shot. Set it up as a proportion. Do the algebra. There's going to be an ending step to find the angle measure. Think about that. Angle measure. Give it a shot. All right. So when I do this, I'm going to plug in the information I know. I want to find L. So I'm going to use the sine of L like I normally would over 6 is equal to the sine of 125 over 10. Opposite sides. Opposite sides, opposite sides. Okay? If you didn't have that set up, pause now and try the end. Okay, here we go. Cross multiply. I am going to find the sine 10 times the sine of L is equal to 6 times the sine of 125. Divide by 10, divide by 10, and I get the sine of L is equal to 6 times the sine of 125 over 10. Now, how do I undo the sine symbol? Because I want to get L, the measurement of angle L. How do I find the angle measurement going backwards in trigonometry? Inverse, inverse, inverse! Yes, it is the inverse! Ha! So when I do this, the angle L is equal to the inverse of sine of 6 times sine of 125 all over 10, and I get my answer. Holy buckets! Holy Toledo! That looks complicated. Let's do it on our calculator. All right, here we go. So when you type this into your calculator, you will get the angle measurement. You take second sine, and then inside those parentheses, you need to take 6 times sine, and you have to make sure that 125 is inside another set of parentheses, end it, divided by 10, and then end the last parentheses. Watch your calculators, watch your parentheses, and solve, and you get L, angle L, is equal to about 29 degrees. About 29. This is a symbol for about. About 29 degrees. Good, great, grand. Here we go. Moving on. Just a couple things here. I just want you to write down one of these formulas. You can write down A, you can write down B, you can write down C, and I'm going to explain why. But just in the yellow bar, and write down one of those. Of course, write the top line, and of course, draw the triangle, but only one of those formulas. Okay? Okay. All right. So if you look at the sines, law of sines, it cannot be used in every single triangle. So for the remaining triangles, we can use the law of cosines. If you know two side lengths and the included angle measure, which is side, angle, side, or if you know all three side lengths, which is side, 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 you cannot use the law of sines, okay? Instead, we use law of cosines. So when we do this, okay, I want you, if I look at, let's focus on a squared is equal to b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cosine of a. That seems like a long process, but in fact, it's really not that bad when we really break it down. So if I wanted to find a, remember the lowercase a is the side. If I wanted to find this side of a, I basically take the other two sides and I square them. I would take a is equal to, and I'm just going to rewrite this, a squared is equal to, and I'm going to take the other two sides that I do not know, which is b and c, and I find the sum of those two squares. Okay? Then, so when I'm trying to find the third side, I take the squares of the other two sides, add their sum, subtract that from 2 times those side lengths, which is b and c, times the cosine of the opposite angle of the side I'm trying to find. What? Trying to find, here I would use angle A as my cosine angle. I want to find the cosine of A to figure out lower a or little a or side A. Okay, so I'm going to show you one. Again, we talked about you use this on side angle side and side side side. All right, so now write this down and I'm going to walk you through this process. If you think you have it, fantastic, give it a shot. If you're like, what is this? Follow along. All right, here we go. Let's dive into this. Dive. That was water splashing. Okay, so we're trying to find XZ. XZ. So I'm going to figure out that's my A. Doesn't matter what's my B, what's my C. The other two are my B and C. Doesn't matter. Okay, so what we know is A squared is equal to B squared plus C squared minus 2 times B times C times the cosine of big A. So when we start plugging things in, again, your missing side is that A squared. Okay, so we know what that is. We know that A squared, let's just figure A squared is equal to 35 squared plus 30 squared. Whoops, can't forget that squaring symbol. Plus 30 squared minus 2 times 35 times 30 times the cosine of 110. Whoops. Okay, now when you type this into your calculator, you take the 35 squared plus 30 squared minus 2 times 35 times 30 times the cosine of 110. You can type all of that into your calculator. You will get a number of, this is going to be A squared, is equal to a number like 2843.242301. If you type that in correctly, that's the answer you will get. Okay, 2843.242301. That could be a song. Now what you could do, now what we need to do in order to figure out how to undo a square symbol is the square root. So you find the square root of 2843.242301. That could be a song. Okay, and you will get 53.3. 53.3. And you're done. Okay? If you wanted to go back and just type into your calculator the square root of that entire formula right at the very beginning, that would work. Okay? Just watch your parentheses again. Make sure you're typing it in correctly. Make sure that you're typing it in as nicely and as neatly as possible. Okay? A equals 53.3. All right. All right, now what we are going to do is we're going to be finding an angle measure, angle T. Okay, so it does not matter, like I said before, it does not matter what is your A, your B, your C. Normally we said our A is going to be that missing measurement. Now if you notice, there is no missing side measurement. So this problem does not matter what your A, what your B, what your C is, because it will all come together in one. Okay, it all comes together. So, if I look at this, I take A squared is equal to B squared plus C squared minus 2 times B times C times the cosine of A. Now, when I look at this, I apologize, I want to rewind. This does matter, what's our A, what's our B, what's our C, because we want to find T. That angle T needs to go in for angle A, which means the opposite side of 7 is going to be our A. B and C don't matter, but A does. I apologize. Now we can fast forward. Here we go. Now we're going to get started. So A squared is equal to B squared plus C squared minus 2BC times the cosine of A. So if I look at this, I'm going to plug in what I know. I'm going to take 7 squared is equal to 13 squared plus 11 squared minus 2 times 13 times 11. Okay, so when I do that, I'm just going to start multiplying everything out because, oh, I forgot cosine of T. because I don't know what the cosine of t is. I don't know what t is. That's what I'm trying to figure out. So because of that, I just start my first step with multiplying. I'm going to multiply it. 49 is equal to 13 squared plus 11 squared is 290 minus 2 times 13 times 11 is 286 cosine of t. If I look at this and I do my algebra correctly, I need to subtract 290 because this 286 is multiplying by the cosine of t. So remember, just like in other algebraic equations, I need to subtract first. So I subtract 49 minus 290, and I get a negative 241 is equal to a negative 286 times the cosine of t. In order to get cosine of t all by itself, we need to divide by negative 286. And when I do that, I now have a negative 241 over a negative 286 is equal to the cosine of t. Now, think to yourself, how do I undo the cosine of t? How do I undo, or the inverse operation of that cosine? It's the inverse cosine. Hey ho, hey ho. So I take this, the measure of t is equal to the inverse cosine of a negative 241 over a negative 286. When I do that, the measure of angle t is going to equal about 33 degrees. Okay, that was a lot of information, but we came up with that about 33 degrees. That was the last thing that I have for you today. A little bit longer of a video, and I apologize for that. But just remember that you need those formulas. Know those formulas for the sine and cosine. You're going to have a worksheet to do when you come back tomorrow. But other than that, I want you to have a wonderful day. And I hope you enjoyed this. All right, go give someone a high five. Great.